Hey, Noah.
Hello, can I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. I'm Noah, and today I am the pit. I am the all-encompassing pit because I am having to do a lot of playing Switzerland with a group of people and keeping them contained and hopefully supported. So I'm doing a lot of this today. And there's some vomit in there, and there's some peanut shells and people trampling around, but we're just going to keep holding space to try and get a group of people across a finish line. So that's how I feel today. My access needs today, or I probably will have to have my camera off. I'm having to dual focus today due to this issue, but I'm present for as much of this as I can. And when we have breakouts and questions, I'll be here and I'll try and chime in because I'm really excited about the work today. And that's me. I would love to popcorn it over to my new friend Becky if that's within their boundaries today.
I still say I'm totally just a mouse. I'm observing. That is my day today. I just need a nap. I'll bounce it over to Brad.
I'll go first, Brad. I feel like the little guy in the DeWitt drawing of the theater where he's way up at the very top, and he got screwed to get some job that's up there, but he's got to do it. So yeah. How about Annette?
Howdy, all. Um, Due to not technical difficulties, but my own limitations of knowledge of technology, I was not able to join you last week, to my great frustration. So I am new to naming ourselves for a bit of the theater. But I feel like maybe this is too literal, but I feel like I am the producer. I am a producer. We're about to put on the play that goes wrong, and many things are happening all around me, and I'm trying to keep a cool head and keep everybody directed on all the things that need to happen to make money, to keep us afloat, to be artistic and ethical and all of those things. So yeah, I think that's me today.
Great. And now, would you invite somebody else to go next?
Sure, Catherine.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or whatever you might be, wherever you are. I, like Annette, was unable to attend the meeting last week due to being in a show, but I'm done with that show now. Today I'm kind of feeling like the cannon that burned down the Globe Theater. That's sort of where I'm at today. A lot of things going very much awry, and I seem to be sort of at the center of them. But the weekend's a 3-day weekend, so I'm feeling a lot better about that. And I'm gonna hopefully sort of rest and reset from that. Let's see. Joshua, I don't think you've gone yet.
I think I'm going to choose one of the censors for today. I spent the day. So, this performing arts high school that I'm working at now, they cram like basically a BFA curriculum into the structure of a regular high school. So, there's all these classes that don't line up with the grade system. And so, you have to find a way to cheat 1,000 grades into like 2 periods and all do all these grades for all these consultants and guest artists and things. And so I don't know, it just felt very administrative for me today. So I'm going to be a censor and I'm going to pass it. What are the censors called again?
The Master of the Revels.
Master of the Revels. Oh yeah, I love that title. I'll take it. And I'm going to pass it to Casey.
Hi. Can I be Hell? Um,
You can.
I both of my kids have hand, foot, mouth, my two smallest. And so have spent more time out of daycare than they've spent in it this school year. And I had Mary Poppins auditions on Monday, and I had 80 people. And tonight I have callbacks, and I have 56 people, and I'm still creating itineraries for parent meetings and all kinds of things with them. So I cried in the office of the daycare today. So it was a great day. We had a good time. So this is it. I found it. I'm in hell. Is just sort of where I am. But I am really excited to be in this class. I always really appreciate getting to talk with other grown-ups about this thing I love. So I'm really glad to be here.
Will you raise a hand for Casey if you haven't gone yet so she can know who to?
Brad.
Thank you, and sending all sorts of good vibes your way, Casey. So I'm feeling like an apprentice today because I'm trying to just be in that learning mindset, soak it in. I'm a sponge. Bring it on. I'm ready to do the work and do some learning. Yeah, so I think Liam is our last victim.
And Evelyn. I think Evelyn also.
I will happily pass it on to Evelyn after I am finished. I am feeling, well, I'll start with access needs because, yeah, and Emily too. Emily, AKA Kermit mom. Yes. I have a 5-year-old that is first week of kindergarten, might just like, apparently his thing this week is like wailing like an animal. So you might just be hearing that. There's no way to avoid it. So it's just going to happen. I will try and it'll just be like the globe with people, you know, drinking ale and wailing and throwing things, right? Children are a treasure indeed. Casey, all the love to you. I received, so this is my second week of teaching. We're 2 weeks into the semester, and I received several emails from students, good ones, saying that they're having a good experience in my class. So I'm feeling very privileged today. I mean, for those educators out there, you know, there's nothing better than getting, you know, feedback like, I'm so grateful for you. You're such an amazing educator, blah, blah, blah. So it makes it all worth it. So I'm one of those, you know, I'm in one of those private theaters indoor. I'm at the Blackfriars, you know, drinking my glass of grog, having a great time, throwing money, you know, making it rain, as it were. So that's how I feel today. And I will pass it on to Evelyn as promised.
Thanks, Liam. How am I feeling? Hi, everyone. I hope you guys had a good week. Can't believe it's over 2 weeks. It feels much longer. I'm doing fine. I just have a little bit of a headache. I just took some ibuprofen, but nothing that can't be fixed. And I guess I was trying to imagine what you could find in the Playhouse. I'm thinking like the dusty or forgotten actor roles that were left off in the corner somewhere from last production. That's how that's what I'm imagining when I think of where I'm sitting, just watching and observing also. Like I believe it was Becky who was saying she was observing. So that's how I am today, and I will pass it to Emily.
Thanks, Evelyn. I have changed what I am or who I am with every single one of your responses. So I'm going to go with that actor who plays all of the roles. I'm just one of them that plays 4 or 5 roles and carries a spear. So Kate.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Everybody's carrying a lot of things. Oh, and Emily's literally carrying a head of a puppy. And it looks like Kermit has brought his nephew is climbing the wall with him. Is that Robin up there at the top?
They have a role. They have a role
Okay.
here, and they're doing their scene for you.
Oh, they're doing their scene. Nice. Nice. I appreciate that. I have to say, I feel a little bit like the keeper of the book in the Playhouse because I feel like I'm just juggling all of these moving parts and I'm not sure I have a hold of all of them. So we'll see how we do. So I want to talk for a few minutes about a couple of things. I want to share a couple quotes from the period with you of things that people said about what it was like to go to the theater or be in the theater, and show you a couple pictures of a few things. And then we are going to do a scene together, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to work with some cue scripts. So we'll just notice whatever comes up for you when I say that. That we're going to do a little exercise with cue scripts, and see what that tells us. Yeah. Okay, so let's go over here. It's so hard to show me my own slide Zoom. Why is that? It's like all of a sudden it's fascinated by every other window I have open, and it's not interested in sharing my slides with me. Okay, come over here. Liam, would you mind to read us this quote from Dr. Thomas Platter, please?
It would be my pleasure. Dr. Thomas Platter, 1599 he's immortal. The places are built in such a way that they act on a raised scaffold, and everyone can well see everything. However, there are separate galleries and places where one sits more pleasantly and better, therefore also pays more. For he who remains standing below pays only 1 English penny, but if he wants to sit, he is let in at another door where he gives a penny further. But if he desires to sit on cushions in the pleasant place, where he not only sees everything well, but can also be seen, then he pays at a further door another English penny.
Great, thank you. So he's not immortal. He said that in 1519 after seeing a production of Julius Caesar at the theater. Yeah, at the brand new Globe. So we looked at this drawing last week of the Globe. And then, of course, in the reading, you saw this sketch of Titus Andronicus that Henry Peacham did, which has the scholars all head up because they're like, well, but that doesn't mesh with what we think we know. And it's like, it's just a sketch the guy drew. Everybody settle down. It's not, he didn't know we were going to be looking at it 400 years later. Right. Here is C. Walter Hodge, was a Shakespeare scholar, mid 20th century. He's got a book with a bright orange binding, which if I had my books unpacked, I would be able to tell you exactly what it's called, but it's a book from mid 20th century about material conditions of Shakespeare's stage, right? And what it was like in the playhouse. And so this is kind of a cross section that he drew, trying to show you all the different places in the theater. And it's a little speculative, but then happily, we have this slightly more concrete example available to us now. So C. Walter Hodge was basically spot on. So that's the outside of the rebuilt Globe on the South Bank in London, if that's not familiar to you. And then here's kind of the bird's eye view of what it looks like inside, right? So this is the best research we had in about 1995 when they started the work of building the Globe, right? So you can see certainly the folks standing in the pit, who Hamlet refers to them as the groundlings. That's the only place we have that word. So we only get that word from Hamlet himself. But somehow that's what we refer to them as, right? Is the rebuilt Globe not at least in part designed off the mid 20th century sketch? Well, I think it's informed by the same research for sure, right? You can see, as some of our readings talked about this week, we've got 3 different doors upstage. It's a little hard to see the one that is upright because it's obscured by a column in this photo. But so there's doors up left and up right, and then there's that discovery space in the center, which our scholars are, again, all het up about. Was that there? Was it not there? We don't know for sure. I'm going to show you in Shakespeare's text how I know that it was there. He tells us that that door is there. Here's a reverse angle where you can see the crowd at the Globe on a day when the place is packed, right? So, and I don't know about you all, but I mean, I love me some Shakespeare. I feel like that much is clear, but standing for 3 hours in the pit at the Globe is work. Like that requires a level of focus and dedication that I just scarcely have, right? And I will stand in the pit for a Springsteen concert. I'm just saying, like, I will stand online for Bruce for 8 hours and then I will stand in the pit. But standing in the pit at the Globe is work. Joshua, would you read us this quote from Sir John Davies?
Absolutely. Sir John Davies, 1611. We see at all the playhouse doors, when ended is the play, the dance and song, 1,000 townsmen, gentlemen and whores, porters and serving men together throng.
Great, thank you. So he's telling us a little bit about his experience of who is coming out the doors of the Playhouse with him. There are several extant quotes from people talking about pickpockets and cut purses at the Playhouse. So you had to kind of watch your money. And Will Kemp, who was a clown with Shakespeare's Company for a long time, talks about how one time they caught a cut purse in the action and they hauled him up on stage and shamed him in front of everybody in the house. And then Evelyn, would you read us this quote by the extremely charming Philip Stubbs?
Sure. These goodly pageants being ended, every mate sorts to his mate. Everyone brings another homeward of their way very friendly, and in their secret conclaves, covertly they play the sodomites or worse.
So there you go. Philip Stubbs would have probably a recurring gig on Fox News if he were alive today. Philip Stubbs was a Puritan. He wrote a whole bunch of pamphlets, was deeply, deeply offended by the existence of the theaters and the playhouses, and wrote over and over again throughout his career about how terrible they were. And I judge that this is probably not going to play, so we are gonna stop share. Hold on. And yet they do it still. Yeah, a little bit. Sorry, I should have pulled this up sooner. Give me 1 second. So let's see if this will work. So just let's see how this goes. Okay, so what did you notice?
I loved how they utilized the audience space as well, which I would be curious. I mean, I didn't really see any indication in the text that that would have been the case, but I like how they're using it creatively and kind of bringing the audience, the groundlings, into the action too. I thought that was pretty cool.
I love how present the audience is. Like just the connection between the performers and the audience is just it's just right there. I love that.
For sure, for sure. I would argue that there is way more direct address in Shakespeare than we see in most, not all, but most productions might have, like during a soliloquy, an actor might turn to the audience. I think it's everywhere. I think it is everywhere in the plays.
I also, sorry if anybody else wants to speak, just cut me off. But I love the how like unvarnished it is, and sort of commercial looking and unpolished and unspectacular. I like that. It's very chill.
It looked like they were playing to the crowd, so there's a lot more comedy than tragedy
Mm.
in playing against and with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No lighting. So no like isolated areas. It's just always full stage.
Yeah, no, it does not have a roof. That is true, Becky. I mean, there's a roof over the seats, but there's no roof over the pit, and there's only a roof over just a little portion of the stage. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see my t-shirt, but it actually says "We do it with the lights on," which is the slogan of the American Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia, which is the first Elizabethan indoor playhouse replica. It is no longer the only, but at the time that it was built, it was the one and only. So let me show you Blackfriars. So that's the American Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia. And I will tell you that staging one of these plays on that stage teaches you so much. Shakespeare is leaving signposts for you everywhere in the text about things that have got to happen, that editors sitting comfortably in their studies are going to miss, right? And so when the editor of a modern edition is adding stage directions, and usually in a modern edition, you'll see added stage directions are kind of in square brackets. They'll tell you somewhere in very small type how they're going to signify those for you, but most of the time it's square brackets. But if you don't find that in the small type, then you just assume that those are stage directions and you have to do them. And they are not necessarily in the right place. They are not necessarily the most interesting choice. And sometimes they limit people's understanding of what could be happening in a moment, because anyway, that stage is going to tell you what you have to do. Here's the reverse view. Here's a picture I took after rehearsal one day. So that's what it looks like when you're standing on stage at the Blackfriars. You'll notice off to the corners of the stage, right, there are these stools. There's the gallant stools where people pay to sit. And I just added a couple photos from a production that I directed there so that you could see how close those folks on the gallant stools are to the actors. They are sometimes inches away from the action, which, you know, when you get into combat and dancing, brings its own challenges, right? And often actors are going to, you know, stand where, so Oberon is standing here in the back watching what's going on in this scene from Midsummer. And he's only about a foot away from this guy. He's going to turn and talk to him. He's going to give asides directly to sometimes the people on those gallant stools, right? And then also the other thing about being on the gallant stools is the rest of the audience is sort of watching you watch the play, right? And of course, in the Elizabethan Playhouse, it was to be seen. But at the ASC, it's more about having the experience. It's less about the social status. So then people are watching you react, which sometimes then becomes part of the business of the play, right? And then this is the Wanamaker Playhouse. Not to be outdone, the good folks at the Globe said, "Oh yes, American Shakespeare Center, we see you and we raise you." So you can see that structurally it's very similar to the Blackfriars Playhouse, right? So also lit by chandelier light, benches on the sides, stairs down into the house, and again, the three entrances. So you've got a door up left, a door up right, and then they've got a door center. So at the ASC, it's curtains. And at ASC, sometimes they change out the curtains depending on the design, such as it is for any given show, right? Do they fill the pit with seats at those in Merrick? Well, at the indoor playhouse, they're benches. You're paying a little bit more money to be at an indoor playhouse, and so you get a seat. If you want a cushion for your butt on that wooden bench, you pay a little bit more for that. But you do get, everybody gets to sit. What I will say though, let me see if I can show you. If you're up here in this balcony, right, and you're in these back seats, can you see my cursor? Yeah. So if you're up in those seats, I can tell you, and especially if you're back here on the side, like if you're in the front row on the side, you're okay. But if you're in the back row on the side upstairs, you're gonna have to stand up at certain points during the play to see what's happening, right? So there's an expectation that the audience is gonna just have to be a little more physically engaged in that way. You will miss stuff. There is a backstage. Yeah, it's not huge because you don't need a lot of room for prop storage, right? You might need, if you're doing Othello, you need a bed. If you're doing Romeo and Juliet, you need a bed. You might need something for the statue of Hermione to stand on at the end of The Winter's Tale, things like that. But, or maybe there's a couple benches or whatever, but so it's not a huge backstage. And the dressing rooms are down some stairs. But there's a crossover. And then the other thing that you're doing backstage often is you're creating all the sound cues because they are at the Blackfriars, they're all about original practices, just like the Globe. So it's all the music and all the sound cues are live and created by the actors. There's not a sound engineer. There's nobody calling go for any of those sound cues. It's all on the actors. We must participate by playing along. Yeah, absolutely. I think I have one more quote for you. Yeah. Lauren, would you read us this Thomas Dekker quote from 1611?
I will.
Thank you.
In the prologue of If This Be Not a Good Play, the Devil is in It, writes of poets who can call the banished auditor home and tie his ear with golden chains to his melody, can draw with adamantine pen even creatures forged out of the hammer on tiptoe to reach up and from rare silence clap their brawny hands to applaud what their charmed soul scarce understands.
Yeah, thank you. I know that wasn't the easiest one.
I'm not sure what those sounds meant.
So yeah, so what did those sounds mean? Lauren made word sounds. What did they mean? Becky says no idea. Fair enough.
I mean, you know, higher level, broad level, people are clapping at things they don't understand, like the deeper sort of ramifications of, I think.
Or they're so moved by what's happening that even though they can't necessarily articulate what it is, it's reaching into their soul and moving them, right?
It just I don't know, I detected some sort of like, I don't know, it seemed negative to me. Golden chains, something about the golden chains.
Okay. I think I don't think he meant it in that way. Not that I know what Thomas Dekker's thought process was, but my sense was more that he's able to, with his verse, kind of bring your ear along, not in a sense of being trapped, but sort of drawn towards the thing. Yeah, Annette.
It sounds like not just bring any ear though, but specifically the ears of people who are forged out of the hammer, who have brawny hands, who don't have an understanding of what the text actually was. So the worker, the uneducated, right?
We can get to everybody, he's sort of saying. Yeah. Cool. So I wanted to just share some of that. I wanted to share those visuals and also some of those quotes from the period, just to give a little more context around the vibe in the Playhouse. Yeah. So now I need some actors. So Annette, you want to act? Okay, and Noah's in. So I need a Caesar. Annette, you want to play Julius Caesar?
Hell yeah.
Sure. Okay. Noah, you want to play Brutus?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I need a Cassius. Catherine's in. She's playing Catherine's. Awesome. I think I just did a Catherine and Cassius hybrid, a Cathris. I need a soothsayer who's feeling like they can see the future. Becky is in for the soothsayer. Awesome. Artemidorus. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Decius Brutus. Who's feeling a little Decius? Thank you, Brad Lemons. I need a Papilius. That's not too hard. Papilius is a low stakes investment if you're tentative. Awesome, Lauren. Thank you. Cinna, not Cinna the poet, so you don't have to worry about getting strung up. Cinna. Casey's in for Cinna. And then I need two more. I need a Casca. Joshua's up for Casca. And then I need a Metellus Cimber. Huh? Who? Evelyn, awesome. Okay, so if you go over to Canvas and you look in the module under today's class, for week 2, you will see cue scripts for each of the characters I just named: Caesar, Brutus, Cassius, Soothsayer, Artemidorus, Decius, Papilius, Cinna, Casca, and Metellus Cimber. So grab your cue script and open that if you would, and just take like a minute or two and have a look at your cue script. So you probably caught this from the reading, but actors did not in the early modern playhouse get the whole play. It was too expensive and too unwieldy to make that many copies, to write out by hand that many copies of the play. So what actors got instead was their own words with 1 or 2 cue words, right? And so literally they got a role, and the size of the role told them how big their part was. And that is why we talk about getting a role in a show. It comes from this Elizabethan playhouse. Lauren, I can't remember what you said. I think I said, yeah, Papilius is a low investment. And I think you put your hand up for that, right? Okay, so has everybody got their cue scripts open? Are you able to see your part?
Yeah.
Can I just confirm who I am again? Is it Metellus on the
I
last
think you're
one?
Metellus Cimber.
Okay.
We have somebody else's Casca, right? Yes? Okay, great. Okay. Take a look at your cue script. And my first question for you as you look at it is, do you address anyone? How can you tell if you address anyone? Brad and Becky, what are you seeing?
Well, I have a line that says, "Oh, Caesar, read mine first." So I'm obviously asking Caesar to do that.
Great. Okay.
And I have part of a line before me. It says, "If March are come." So I'm assuming that would be the cue.
Okay.
Yeah, a name and a comma.
A name and a comma. Great. Yep. Always a clue. Yep.
I ask a question.
Okay.
I don't know who I'm addressing, only that I'm addressing someone.
Great. Yeah. So there's a big question. There's a piece of information a cue script does not give you. You're talking to somebody. Who might it be? Does anybody address you? Can you tell?
The cue for the second line here is Papilius.
Okay.
That's pretty
Helpful.
clear.
Somebody says your name. Awesome. Okay. Can you tell how many lines there are between when you speak and the next time you speak? Woo! So that gets interesting. How many lines do you have? Do you talk a lot? Do you talk a little? Do you have no flippant idea because you can't see what anybody else's side looks like? Do you ask questions? Does your character ask questions? Okay. Do you know who you're asking them of? Can you tell? In some cases, yeah. Not so much for others. Okay, great. Okay, so what don't you know? What are the things you don't know yet? based on looking at your cues?
Like if I didn't know the play, I know that we stab a guy, but I don't know everything else.
Okay.
And the necessary, like what we currently would do dramatically to like score our script. I don't know where my beats are. I don't know the precipitating event right now. Again, if I
Yeah,
this
yeah.
was-
Yeah, if you just imagine that this is fresh text for you. Yeah, Lauren.
I don't know where we are in the script.
Okay, great.
I feel like I've got one page and I don't know if I have one line and then another one in 3 weeks, or if I get these 2 lines.
And you're the guy who's playing 7 parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always possible. Cool. What else don't you know? Casey.
I have a line that just says, "Oh, Caesar," and that's it. And I know it happens before we stab him. So I must be addressing him and not mourning him. But
Okay.
other than that, I don't know if it's like, "Oh, Caesar," or if it's right, like how am I addressing this person? Like, what is the intent? What am I trying to achieve or get?
I love it, Casey. I love it. Oh, Caesar, knock it off. Yeah, it seems like a pretty chill character. Oh no, not chill. Yeah, awesome. So you also don't know, I mentioned this before, right? You don't know how many people talk in between, right? So yeah. We are gonna, so my invitation to you, first of all, is if you are Brutus or Cassius, Decius, Cinna, Casca, or Metellus Cimber, I'd like to invite you to please find, I have picked up my sword or my dagger here. Please find a weapon to hand so that you are ready when the moment of stabbing comes. I'm gonna do everything I can. So much Meisner. Yeah, I'm gonna just highlight the hell out of Julius Caesar when the moment arrives. Okay, so in order for this to work at all, I will tell you this is so much fun when we're all in the circle together, and I've never done it before on Zoom. So either this is gonna work or it's gonna make like a loud sucking noise, and we'll just sort of see what happens. What I think is required for this to work though, is for all of you who are actors, need to have your microphones on the whole time. And as soon as you hear what you think sounds like your cue, I need you to speak. I need you to not be polite modern actors. Yeah. So, and actually before we start, I'm just going to read the stage direction at the beginning, and we're going to have a little chat about that. Yeah. So the first thing that happens is a flourish. And then enter Caesar, Brutus, Cassius, Casca, Decius, Metellus, Trebonius, Cinna, Antony, Lepidus, Artemidorus, Papilius, and the soothsayer. So if you think for a moment, if you can just imagine for a moment that you don't know this play or that this is new information to you and you just see that list, are all those people coming together? Are they coming from the same place? Is that one huge ass procession? Are they coming in different doors? We just looked at those 2 different stages, right? The Globe and the Blackfriars. So are they coming in different doors? Caesar coming first? Is the soothsayer already on stage? Yeah, Josh.
I had heard that like one of the doors was for like the villains and the other door was for like the hero. Is that true? And how much should they observe the door usage?
Whew, I've never heard that.
I don't know. I heard that somewhere. I didn't know if that was an actual thing or not.
What I understand is that if they're crawling up out of the trap, you're usually coming from hell or from a grave, right? And if you're descending from above, you're probably coming from the heavens. But the individual doors.
I had heard it was right was like the good guys and left, the left door was like the bad guys. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never read that. So I feel like somebody would have brought it up somewhere in grad school if that was a thing. But yeah, super medieval, right? So we have this huge, so part of the trouble we have with this entrance. Remember I told you that some of the scribes had their own habits? So this is Ralph Crane, the guy who liked to take all of the entrances and put them all together at the top of the scene. But so as a company, we have to decide what we're going to do about that, right? And what kind of problems that might cause for us. Yeah. So my invitation is now to turn your microphones on. And now that you are all, congratulations, members of the Lord Chamberlain's Men and Women, the company's expanding. Let's have a first read of this amazing scene. Yeah.
Could we assume that we have entered?
I guess we do. Yeah.
All right. The Ides of March are come.
I, Caesar, but not gone.
Hail Caesar, read this schedule.
Bonus doth desire you to o'erread at your best leisure this his humble suit.
Oh, Caesar, read mine first, for mine's a suit that touches Caesar nearer. Read it, great Caesar.
Great. So
What
let me stop you for 1 second. So what props do we already know we need?
A letter.
Suits.
Suits. Yeah. Right. And what kind of stage business has to be happening here?
They're shoving them in Caesar's face or proffering them.
Yeah, there's I mean, the details of how that looks, whether it's shoving them in his face or whatever, but Decius and Artemidorus are now both trying to get Caesar's attention with their individual pieces of paper, right? So we know that they both have to be trying to waylay him in some way. Yeah, cool.
And we all know we need daggers or swords.
Yep. We do indeed, yes. Although some of us might not know that yet. Right? Okay, Decius, will you take your line one more time?
Yes, Trebonius doth desire you to or read at your best leisure this his humble suit.
Oh, Caesar, read mine first, for mine's a suit that touches Caesar nearer. Read it, great Caesar.
What touches us ourselves shall be last served.
Delay not, Caesar, read it instantly.
What, is the fellow mad?
Right, so does Artemidorus get shoved out of the way? Is there anybody between them and Caesar? If you're one of the other conspirators, do you want Artemidorus to get to Caesar with that suit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to know the show. Yeah.
No,
Yep.
it's okay.
Oh.
It's okay. What does Caesar's line tell you about him when he says, what touches us ourselves shall be last served? Is he that magnanimous, or is he trying to look that magnanimous? We don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we can tell from this excerpt.
Right. But it's a question to maybe think about how you might play it, right? You might try it both ways, right? Like,
yeah,
which one's which? Yeah. Let's just take it from Caesar's, what touches us ourselves shall be last served.
What touches us ourselves shall be last served.
Delay not, Caesar, read it instantly.
What, is the fellow mad?
Oh, I didn't cast a Publius. Sirrah, give place.
What, urge you your petitions in the street? Come to the Capitol.
Oh,
So
I
let me
wish
stop you for
your
a second.
enterprise today
There's
may
no,
thrive.
there's no entrance for Publius.
Hmm.
He's not part of that masked entrance at the beginning. Ooh, but suddenly he's got a line.
Does that mean that he's somewhere in the house? Or that he's not entered? Or that he's off stage? Or that they forgot him?
Was he a different character in a different version?
You know, Caesar, we only have, I mean, Caesar's easier because we only have one version. So it could be that the scribe forgot about him when he was making his masked entrance. But then that means as the acting company, you have to decide, does he come in with everybody else? Was he already there? Again, when we think about like what that entrance looks like at the beginning, is that all 12 of you sort of marching on through those 2 doors together? Is that a staggered, like, how does that, what's going to happen, right? And then there's Publius. And who's he talking to? When he says, Sirrah, give place.
Somebody in his way.
Somebody's in his way. Or is he getting rid of Artemidorus?
That makes sense.
Cool. I'll give you Publius's beautiful line one more time. Sirrah, give place.
What, urge you your petitions in the street? Come to the capital.
I wish your enterprise today may thrive.
What enterprise, Popilius?
Fare you well.
What said blah, blah, blah. What said Popilius Lena?
He wished today our enterprise might thrive. I fear our purpose is discovered.
Look how he makes to Caesar, mark him.
Casca be sudden, for we fear prevention. Brutus, what shall be done? If this be known, Cassius or Caesar shall never turn back, for I will slay myself.
Cassius, be constant. Publius Lena speaks not of our purposes, for look, he smiles, and Caesar doth not change.
Trebonius
So
knows.
what stage directions are embedded in that line? What has to be happening?
Caesar is smiling. That Caesar is separate from the others as they're having the conversation.
Yeah, Cassius and Brutus have to be far enough away from Caesar to be having this conversation without being heard, is baked in there. What else?
It also tells you what Publius's emotional state is when he's in there. He smiles.
Yeah, so there's information in Noah's line that tells us what must be happening for other actors, right? And if you're the actor playing Popilius Lena, you wouldn't know that from your own, because his role is, all it says is Sirrah, give place, right? He doesn't know, but then when he hears it, he realizes he has to be smiling while he talks to Caesar, right?
This feels like the most frustrating form of improv, where somebody tells you something and then you're like, oh yes, I'm doing that.
Yes,
Or is it brilliant? Or is it brilliant? A brilliant way to work on a script, because it's making you slow down and talk beat by beat. I'm obsessed with this.
Cool. Will you take it from Brutus's look how he makes to Caesar, mark him?
Yes. Look how he makes to Caesar, mark him.
Casca be sudden, for we fear prevention. Brutus, what shall be done? If this be known, Cassius or Caesar never shall turn back, for I will slay myself.
Cassius, be constant. Publius Lena speaks not of our purposes, for look, he smiles, and Caesar doth not change.
Trebonius knows his time, for look you, Brutus, he draws Mark Antony out of the way.
Okay, again, so like, what's the embedded stage direction?
He has
Right.
to move Antony.
Trebonius has to be somewhere facilitating what's happening to Mark Antony, right? Also, in this earlier line of Cassius's, when he says Casca be sudden, Casca has no line there. But what do we know then about what has to be happening on stage?
He needs to be involved.
He needs to be close enough to this conversation with Brutus and Cassius, or at least doing a drive-by, right? And what the hell is Caesar doing this whole time that these conspirators are talking? We're gonna have to come up with something for him to do, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he reading a letter?
He might be reading the letter. If he took it,
Hmm.
he said he
Well-
wasn't interested in reading Artemidorus's suit because it concerned him.
Right. And the other conspirators could be distracting him. I mean, there's so many ways we could play it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of options, but we have to pick something.
Yeah.
Also, Cassius threatening to kill himself if he can't kill Caesar. I have to say, I get bored by how many times Cassius threatens to kill himself by the time the play's over. I'm like, yeah, go ahead already. But is there a gesture that comes with that?
He's
It
holding
doesn't
a
say, but I
weapon.
feel like it depends partly on what you have Caesar doing. If he's watching them, then there probably wouldn't be any kind of a gesture.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Cool. Let's take it from Cassius's Trebonius knows his time.
Trebonius knows his time. For look you, Brutus, he draws Mark Antony out of the way.
Where's Metellus Cimber? Let him go and presently prefer his suit to Caesar.
He is addressed. Press near and second him.
Casca, you are the first that rears your hand.
Are we all ready? What is now amiss that Caesar and his Senate must redress?
Great. So let me pause you for a second. So where is Metellus Cimber? What's he been doing this whole time? We're gonna have to figure that out. He's just been milling around the capital. Decius can't see him because he's asking, where is he? So that means we need to figure out the plausible sightlines on stage so that Decius, Brutus, and Metellus Cimber can't see each other because of other people. And also that Decius is close enough to Brutus to say to him, where is he? Right, so think about all the motion that has to be happening and that we have to justify in some way. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
Does this mean that there can't be multiple lines that end in the same short phrase?
No. I guarantee that there are multiple lines that end in the same short phrase.
So like my cue is the capital.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a pretty common ending to a phrase.
Yep.
But if I hear that in a week and I pop in with my, I wish you're today, that's wrong.
But what happens if you do?
We start over.
Let's see what happens if you hear your cue someplace where, because I'll tell you in the next scene, when Mark Antony is addressing the people in the forum, the same cue word over and over again is the phrase honorable man. And part of what happens in that scene when everybody's working with a cue script is it becomes on fire. It's becomes so lively because it's not polite actors politely waiting for the end of the long speech because they don't know it's a long speech. So as soon as they hear honorable man, bah, 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 oh, and then he keeps talking bah, 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 every time, right? And it just, the whole thing kind of sparkles in a way that a lot of what I might call museum piece Shakespeare does not always sparkle.
No,
Noah
when
feels that
characters when characters speak at the same time, are those written as being in unison, or are they all just individually written as having the same cue?
There, I would say it varies depending on the scene and the circumstance. There are times when people are supposed to speak together, and then there are times when it's meant to be a kerfuffle. Yeah. But can you start to see, even in this little bit, how many clues Shakespeare's giving you to what needs to be happening on stage? How many embedded stage directions there are? How many things are have to happen? Yeah.
Well, and what I find really interesting, Kate, is like a lot of people, like if I were to give this to my college students, right, we're going to do Julius Caesar, and somebody gets Cinna, as I played Cinna last fall, like you're given the script and you're like, cool, I have 4 lines. But every single line is so important when you analyze it this way. The stakes go up, because if you have to examine it from this lens of like, what is Shakespeare's intent as we craft through the scene, as opposed to, oh, what do I it's such a different way of acting, I guess, because as you said, we're all polite actors who are like, this is my part, I'm in my lane, as opposed to what this is, which is like, these lines are describing what's happening in the moment on stage for the audience to view.
Right. I mean, there's sort of that joke, right, of like blah 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 blah, my line, blah 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 blah, right? But you can't blah 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 here because you can't see it. You have to be listening.
You have to listen.
Yeah. So what does it mean to press near and second him?
To get close to him and, I don't know, is it be his second, like in combat?
Yeah, it's not dissimilar, right? Be reinforce his suit by supporting his claim is kind of, yeah, but press near, right? Again, you got to move.
Well, and that indicates to me that everybody's crowded around Caesar, right? That gives me that big clue is like, we have, like, everybody's trying to get to him. So get on in the actual doggy pile.
Yeah, so then think about what Shakespeare's doing there, right? If Caesar enters first and it is a big scrum behind him, right? And then say, just as one choice, you bring Caesar down center, right? And then all the conspirators are maybe sort of orbiting upstage and, stage left and stage right behind him until it's time to come down and support Metellus Cimber. And then here comes Metellus Cimber, and then here comes Decius Brutus, and then here comes Brutus, and here comes Cassius. And all of a sudden, even though he's like the center, he goes from being in the strongest position to maybe being in a much weaker position. Can you sort of start to see that? And I'm not saying that's the right way to stage it. That's just one, for instance. I mean, if you put him upstage in a strong corner and then everybody goes to him, then he's sort of backed into a corner, right? So either way, he goes from being like grand and that which touches ourselves, blah, 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 to trap like a rat. So it depends on how you want to sort of visualize that part of the story. Yeah. From Brutus's, he is addressed, press near and second.
Oh, sorry. He is addressed. Press near and second him.
Who's my Cinna?
Casey.
Oh, sorry. I had moved on to my next line. Casca, you are the first that rears your hand.
So this is a moment where we're getting information about something that will happen. Right? This is the first moment where we're getting this is what's happening next, right? And so again, that tells us that Cinna has to, at least for a moment, be close enough to Casca to say that without being overheard. Yeah. Will you say it one more time, Casey, since
Yes. Casca, you are the first that rears your hand.
I'm sorry, is this the second time we're hearing the same cue, rears your hand?
Mhm.
Did we go back?
We did. Yep.
Okay, are we all ready? What is now amiss that Caesar and his Senate must redress?
Most high, most mighty, and most puissant Caesar, Metellus Cimber, throws before thy seat and humble heart.
I must prevent thee, Cimber, thy brother by decree is banished. If thou dost bend and pray and fawn for him, I spurn thee like a cur out of my way. No, Caesar doth not wrong, nor without cause will he be satisfied.
Is there no voice more worthy than my own to sound more sweetly in great Caesar's ear for the repealing of my banished brother?
Great. Thank you. Let me pause you for 1 second. So again, from what Caesar says to Metellus Cimber, what do we know that Metellus Cimber has to be doing?
Kneeling.
Yeah. If thou dost bend and pray and fawn for him. So Caesar is standing and Metellus Cimber has to be kneeling. And then Metellus Cimber says, Evelyn, will you read that one more time?
The second part?
Yep.
Is there no voice more worthy than my own to sound more sweetly in great Caesar's ear for the repealing of my banished brother?
I kiss thy hand, but not in flattery, Caesar, desiring thee and Publius Cimber may have an immediate freedom of repeal.
What, Brutus?
Pardon, Caesar. Caesar, pardon, as low to thy foot doth Cassius fall to beg enfranchisement for Publius Cimber.
Right. So what does Cassius have to be doing?
Laying on the ground.
Pretty much, right? So Metellus Cimber was kneeling, Brutus came and joined, and what did Brutus do?
Kiss thy hand.
He kissed Caesar's hand as he kneels down, right? Again, these are embedded stage directions. He's telling us all these things have to happen. And then Cassius tops everybody with a completely prostrating himself. Yeah.
Mm.
Annette, will you take it from Caesar's next line?
Sure. I could be well moved if I were as you. If I could pray to move, prayers would move me. But I am constant as the northern star. Let me a little show it, even in this, that I was constant, Cimber should be banished, and constant do remain to keep him so.
Oh, Caesar.
Hence wilt thou lift up Olympus.
Great Caesar.
Doth not Brutus bootless kneel?
Speak hands for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Et tu, Brute. Then fall Caesar. I have a question.
Yeah.
Et tu, Brute is in italics.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because it's Latin?
Is that, but it's in italics like the Q's are.
Yep. That is true.
Oh,
that
I
okay?
didn't ask my question. I guess I'm confused by it. That's all.
About why it's in the same typeface as the stage
As the
direction.
Q.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't have that many kinds of type. So if you want to differentiate it from the rest of the text, your choices are few. And the fact that it's a foreign language gets it.
That's why, not
Yeah.
because it's yelled, not for emphasis.
I don't think so. I've never read any scholarship that speaks to that.
Okay.
But I will also point out that the actor playing Caesar knows when he falls and he dies because it is embedded in the text, right? So you don't even need the dies there because then fall Caesar tells us, right? And that actually that line of pentameter is 1 foot short. So there's a beat in the middle, which is an invitation to you as the actor playing Caesar to, I don't know, attempt to stay upright, or maybe you're having a moment with Brutus where you're making eye contact with him or reaching out to him in some way, or reacting in disbelief to the fact that Brutus is also joining in on this. Spitting up your little Jim Kirk blood pack, if that's what your production has decided to do. Right.
It's also interesting, Kate, because embedded in the stage direction is during Caesar's line. So when I say earlier, I kiss thy hand, I don't kneel, because he actually says in this line, and kneel. So there's like a building of action with Brutus that's separate from the other two, where it's like, it's interesting because it's almost like Brutus is pleading just that last further to like be the stand-up guy he thought he was.
Sorry, I'm not quite tracking, Noah.
It's in Caesar's line, I am constant as the northern star.
Huh?
After that, there's something where he says, and Brutus kneel.
Does not Brutus bootless kneel?
Right. So I'm
So
just wondering
it's
if like,
pointless that even Brutus is kneeling and it's not getting him anywhere. So why would you think that if you join in, it would help?
yeah, that's what I'm saying though. I'm wondering if like that could be interpreted as he's like, there's a building of action as opposed to like, it all happens at once, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, there's a piling, like a slowly moving
Yeah.
in, right? As each one of the conspirators comes to add his voice to this petition for
Yeah.
Cimber's brother, right? Annette, will you die one more time for us, please?
Yes, let me get back to that page. Okay, stab, stab, stab. Et tu, Brute, then fall Caesar.
Liberty. Freedom. Tyranny is dead. Run hence, proclaim, cry it about the streets.
Some to the common pulpits and cry out liberty, freedom, and enfranchisement.
People and senators, be not affrighted. Fly not, stand stiff, ambition's debt is paid.
So who are you talking to there, Brutus?
I'm talking to every single person on stage and in the crowd.
In the crowd, right? Because there's already 12 of you on stage. Do we have time for extras at this point?
No.
Probably not,
Or the budget.
right? So probably you're talking to the people in the pit right in front of you. Yeah. Cool. Casca.
Go to the pulpit, Brutus.
And Cassius too.
Where's Publius?
Here, quite confounded with this mutiny.
Stand fast together, lest some friend of Caesar's should chance.
Talk not of standing. Publius, good cheer. There is no harm intended to your person, nor to the Roman else. So tell them, Publius.
And leave us, Publius, lest that the people rushing on us should do your age some mischief.
Do so, and let no man abide this deed, but we the doers.
Where is Antony?
Uh-oh. Trebonius. Fled to- oh, sorry.
Oh no, I just said T-Bone.
Yeah. Yo, T-Bone, where are you? Fled to his house amazed. Men, wives, and children stare, cry out, and run as it were doomsday.
Fates, we will know your pleasures. That we shall die, we know 'tis but the time and drawing days out that men stand upon.
Why?
So if you're talking to the fates, where do you take that?
Up.
Absolutely. Right? When you're talking to absent gods or personified concepts in Shakespeare, it's always going up and out, unless you're talking to the devil. But that's like not good theater, because then you're burying your face in the stage, right? So up and out for offstage godheads. Yeah. Will you give us that one more time, Noah?
Yeah, fates, we will know your pleasures. That we shall die, we know. 'Tis but the time and drawing days out that men stand upon.
Why, he that cuts off 20 years of life cuts off so many years of fearing death.
Grant that, and then his death a benefit. So we are Caesar's friends, that we have abridged his time of fearing death. Stoop, Romans, stoop, and let us bathe our hands in Caesar's blood up to the elbows and besmear our swords. Then walk we forth even to the marketplace, and waving our red weapons o'er our heads, let us cry peace, freedom, and liberty.
Stoop,
Okay,
then.
time out. So what is he telling them to do?
Let's all just put our hands inside of all these wounds we've just made and smear ourselves and bathe in his blood.
Yeah.
And our swords. And let's go march around with all this blood on our face.
So how big a hole does a dagger make?
Depends on the dagger.
Yeah. You're a resident expert, Brad, right? But not necessarily that big, right? Like, so how much work is it to like get your fists in those? Ew.
Yeah, ew.
Ew, right? So notice, will you read that again? That bit from Stoop, Roman, stoop, and then notice what Cassius has to do, y'all.
Stoop, Roman, stoop, and let us bathe our hands in Caesar's blood up to the elbows and besmear our swords. Then we walk forth even to the marketplace, and waving our red weapons o'er our heads, let us cry peace, freedom, and liberty.
Stoop then and wash. How many ages hence shall this our lofty scene be acted over in states unborn and accents yet unknown?
How many times shall Caesar's bleed and sport, but now on Pompey's basis lies along no worthier than the dust?
So oft as that shall be, so often shall the nod of us be called, the men that gave their country liberty.
Great. So after Brutus has this great idea that we should all stick our hands in the wounds and smear our swords, what happens?
They're speaking about the course of history and how they will be viewed by future generations, and potentially a commentary on politics of the day.
Sure. Yes. All those things are absolutely true. But literally, what's the next thing that happens after Brutus says, let's do this icky thing? Cassius, what's your line after peace, freedom, and liberty?
Let me pull it up. Stoop then and wash. How many ages hence shall this
Yeah.
our lofty scene be acted over?
Stoop then and wash. Nobody does it when Brutus says, let's do the icky thing. Or maybe Brutus does it by himself. And all the rest of the conspirators are maybe standing around on stage going, you want to what now? And then Cassius is like, no, come on, let's do it. Right? So there's maybe some funny in there in a scene that we don't always think of as being one of the, feel good hits of the season, right? Break leg, Casey. And then there's also this, if Brutus is alone bathing, and then if Cassius is also skeptical about it, but is now trying to talk other people into doing it, right? There's a little power dynamic thing happening there as well. Etymologically, which is first, brutal or Brutus? Excellent question, and I do not know the answer. Cool. All right, so we've lost. Oh God, who was Casey? Casey was
Cinna.
Cinna. Okay. Liam, are you available to jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay. You up for a little Cinna action?
I am. Let me
Okay.
just cue it up here.
Okay.
Make me proud, Liam.
So part of what happens here, right, is suddenly you got to really make your partners look good, right? So somebody mentioned that this is like the worst improv ever, right? But also like improv, it's how can you serve it up? How can you help your partners when you know you have a piece of information that they need? Yeah, how can you sort of lift it up or set it out a little bit for them? Now you can all see what I'm like at table work, right? I interrupt everybody constantly. Cool. So Liam, let us know when you're ready, and then let's read the whole thing one more time now that we know all the things we know. Yeah.
Kate, I'm so sorry. Will you remind me who I am again?
Cinna.
Thank you very much.
Cinna, please.
Cinna. There we go.
I'll give you your cue.
Oh, thanks.
How many times shall Caesar's bleed in sport, that now on Pompey's basis lies along no worthier than the dust?
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, we're gonna go back to the beginning. We're gonna do the whole.
Oh, we're gonna do it again. So
the
sorry.
whole shebang.
Come on. We're gonna go to the whole shebang. Here we
We're
go.
gonna take it from the toppity top
Tippity top, top, top.
with that huge ass group entrance.
Oh, oops. Okay.
Great hordes of people entering the stage. Maybe
Hordes.
together, maybe separately. We're not sure yet.
All right. You ready?
Off you go, Annette.
The Ides of March are come.
I, Caesar, but not gone.
Hail Caesar, read the schedule.
Trebonus doth desire you to o'erread at your best leisure this humble suit.
Oh, Caesar, read mine first. For mine's a suit that touches Caesar nearer. Read it, great Caesar.
What touches us ourselves shall be last served.
Delay not, Caesar. Read it instantly.
What, is this fellow mad?
Here, I'll give place.
What, urge you your petitions in the street? Come to the Capitol.
I wish your enterprise today may thrive.
What enterprise, Popilius?
Fare you well.
What's it, Popilius Lena?
He wished today our enterprise might thrive. I fear our purpose is discovered.
Look how he makes to Caesar. Mark him.
Casca, be sudden, for we fear prevention. Brutus, what shall be done? If this be known, Cassius or Caesar never shall turn back, for I will slay myself.
Cassius, be constant. Popilius Lena speaks not of our purposes, for look, he smiles, and Caesar doth not change.
Trebonius knows his time, for look you, Brutus, he draws Mark Antony out of the way.
Where's Metellus Cimber? Let him go and presently prefer his suit to Caesar.
He is addressed. Press near and second him.
Casca, you are the first that rears your hand.
Are we all ready? What is now amiss that Caesar and his Senate must redress?
Most high, most mighty, and most puissant Caesar, Metellus Cimber throws before thy seat and humble heart.
I must prevent thee, Cimber, thy brother by decree is banished. If thou dost bend and pray and fawn for him, I spurn thee like a cur out of my way. No, Caesar doth not wrong, nor without cause will he be satisfied.
Is there no voice more worthy than my own to sound more sweetly in great Caesar's ear for the repealing of my banished brother?
I kiss thy hand, Caesar, but not in flattery, Caesar, desiring thee that Publius Cimber may have an immediate freedom of repeal.
What, Brutus?
Pardon, Caesar. Caesar, pardon, as low to thy foot doth Cassius fall to beg enfranchisement for Publius Cimber.
I could be well moved if I were as you. If I could pray to move, prayers would move me. But I am constant as the northern star. Let me little show it, even in this, that I was constant, Cimber should be banished, and constant do remain to keep him so.
Oh, Caesar.
Hence wilt thou lift up Olympus.
Great Caesar.
Doth not Brutus bootless kneel?
Speak, hands for me.
Et tu, Brute?
Yup.
Then falls Caesar.
Liberty, freedom, tyranny is dead. Run hence, proclaim, cry it about in the streets.
Some to the common pulpits and cry out liberty, freedom, and enfranchisement.
People and senators, be not affrighted, fly not, stand stiff, ambition's debt is paid.
Go to the pulpit, Brutus.
And Cassius too.
Where's Publius?
Here, oh, sorry. Suna just went away.
Sorry. My family was locked out of the house. Where are we? What was my cue?
I'm so sorry, Liam.
That's okay.
Ignore doorbells.
That's okay.
We love you, Liam's family. Where's Publius?
Here, quite confounded with this mutiny.
Stand fast together, lest some friend of Caesar should chance.
Talk not of standing, Publius, good cheer. There is no harm intended to your person, nor to no Roman else. So tell them, Publius.
And leave us, Publius, lest that the people rushing on us should do your age some mischief.
Do so, and let no man abide this deed, but we the doers.
Where is Antony?
Fled to his house amazed. Men, wives, and children stare, cry out, and run as it were doomsday.
Fates, we will know your pleasures. That we shall die, we know. 'Tis but the time and drawing days out that men stand upon.
Why, he that cuts off 20 years of life cuts off so many years of fearing death.
Grant that, and then his death a benefit. So are we Caesar's friends that have abridged his time of fearing death. Stoop, Romans, stoop, and let us bathe our hands in Caesar's blood up to the elbows, and besmear our swords. Then walk we forth, even to the marketplace, and weaving our red weapons o'er our heads, let us all cry, peace, freedom, and liberty.
Stoop then, and wash. How many ages hence shall this our lofty scene be acted over in states unborn and accents yet unknown?
How many times shall Caesar bleed in sport that now on Pompey's basis lies along no worthier than the dust?
So oft as that shall be, so often shall the not of us be called the men that gave their country liberty.
Woo! Congratulations. That to everyone in the Lord Chamberlain's men. Well done. What a performance. Okay, so how was that? How is it used in a Q script?
I love it. I know I've said it. I love it. I think it's great. I love I just love what I love about it from kind of what the current American standard is this opportunity to break all this down with a group of actors and really talk about what our needs are, because like you said, blah, blah, blah. It's my line now. And I think that I do it. So I feel like this gives the opportunity to really take a moment, take a breath, and like examine exactly what the intent of the playwright is.
I think it's a great exercise. I'd like to use it next time I direct Shakespeare.
Yeah, it's great, Becky, to your point too, for kiddos in the classroom, right? And it is so much better than the 9th grade teacher sort of pontificating from the front of the room. Oh my gosh, to get them up and doing this in the circle a little bit, right? And you can have, if you've got kids who don't want to perform, who are a little more introverted, you could have them maybe do the flourish at the beginning. You can also have them kind of assist and direct and like watch from the front and say, what happens if we put Caesar here and you guys come this way? Or what happens if we put Caesar here and how does that change it, right? They can be giving suggestions. Why don't you guys try it this way, right? So they're still involved and still engaged. And you can also, if you've got a kid who, is a kid who really likes words, but is a little more introverted, you can put them on the dictionary and they can sort of become the dramaturg in the room. And they can, every time a word comes up that we don't know, they can be looking it up and then they can be sharing their expertise, right? I can hear what you're saying, Catherine, too, about how it can be challenging because you're a visual learner. Again, it's a different activity when we're in the room together, because then you're watching the bodies in motion and you're watching the action start to take shape. So we lose that part in the Zoom platform. Agreed. But
and that certainly wasn't a bad thing. That's just, for me, when I first get material, I like to read along, because I'm like, when you're asking questions about, what did so-and-so just say? I'm like, it's gone. I have no idea. I cannot remember it. So for me, that was challenging. I learned I memorized my lines auditorily, but when I first get the material, I'm very visual.
Yeah.
So I know as a student, that would be probably a good challenge to acknowledge that there are different learning styles. But for me, it would definitely be like don't ask me questions about it unless it's my line.
Yeah, fair. Okay. What are the implications? Noah spoke to this a little bit, but what are the implications of this for the rehearsal room? For how you work on one of these plays?
Down
Definitely
with
helps
directors.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Emily, you stabbed me with a Sharpie, just like Caesar.
It creates ensemble.
Yeah, sure does. What were you going to say, Brad?
I was going to say along the same lines as Josh, is it forces the actors to really work as a company to make the scene work together and not just slot into it.
Yeah, for sure.
I do feel like there's some possibility that folks like me today, who have early lines, and then I've spent my lines, I'm done with my lines, I can now check out. And I run into this in a high school classroom all the time, keeping people engaged. I feel like there is some risk. I see, okay, I have 2 lines. I've had to listen to my cues. Oh, those are my cues. Okay, I'm done.
Except you're still on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, this is the difference between the Zoom platform and if we were all in the circle together, right? Because if you're on stage, like one of the things we'd have to figure out is what the hell happened to Trebonius and Mark Antony? When did Trebonius come back in? What happened to Publius? Did Papilius Lena leave and come back? Right? Like what's happening with each of those people when they run out of words? Or did they exit? Where do we exit? And then inviting everybody to sort of make those decisions together, right? About when do they exit? When do they stick around? And maybe they make a decision and then we realize later, oh, wait a minute. We told the guy who was playing Papilius to leave because we thought he was out of words, but actually we need him because clearly he's the onstage witness going, right? So we go back and we rewind and we say, what happens if we don't have him leave? Then what are you doing, right? So I hear you about there's that risk, but I think especially if you're in the space with the students, you can be sort of directing by asking questions.
It also feels like some really good theater-minded computer programmer should write a program to build from normal scripts into cue scripts.
I wish they would do that because this is a lot of work.
Because I'd love to take my kids' show that they're working on right now and give them this, but that's probably 30 or 40 hours of formatting that I'm not gonna do.
And so many windows you have to have open at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially for a scene like this. Yeah. Cool. Any other discoveries, curiosities about this? Reflections on it?
I mean, it just occurred to me as we were having this conversation and going through it, that it creates both opportunity and risk when editing. Just thinking about what you take out might, maybe it's not plot driven, but it certainly may be giving some clues as to how another character is feeling, acting, where they enter, what they're doing. That it's not just about necessarily cutting for plot, but you might have to think about keeping a line just because it gives important information.
Yeah. Like that one line of Caesar's when he's denying Cimber, right? So Annette read, because you had the cut version of this, Annette read like 6 lines. I must prevent thee, Cimber. Thy brother is by decree banished, if thou dost bend and pray and fawn for him. But actually, there's like 8 lines cut out of that speech. And I felt like it was okay to cut it because some of the information gets reinforced. But there's a level of detail in Caesar's contempt for Metellus Cimber that you lose when you make that cut, because he says, be not fond to think that Caesar bears such rebel blood that will be thawed from the true quality, which that with melteth fools. I mean, sweet words, low crooked courtesies, and base spaniel fawning. Right? There's, by the way, there's a whole thing called image. Carolyn Spurgeon wrote this book called Shakespeare's Imagination, and all she does is look at these like image clusters that travel throughout the plays. And whenever she's talking about somebody bending and praying, you also get the cur image, you get the base and the spaniel. You see this in Midsummer too, but she traces these sort of little clusters that kind of travel over and over again throughout the plays. Useful exercise. Yeah, cool. Great. Let's take a 10 and then we'll come back and Lauren and I will rock and roll from there. Yeah. So I have half past the hour, so be back at 40 past. Yeah. And we're back.
Hello, I'm here. I am, if it's okay with y'all, gonna pop into the chat a 3-option poll that has the 3 sort of major themes that I identified in looking to talk about these things in it, so that we can order them, because we can talk about them in any order. But I feel like these are topics that I could talk about for 14 years. And if we don't start somewhere, then we will stay on the first thing forever. So if that's okay with y'all, vote which of these sort of overarching themes we want to do. I'll look at the order and we'll go that direction. Additionally, I'm going to give you a link to the Google Slides that I'm about to share. If you want to open these in your browser, rather than trying to open them, or rather than trying to follow on my share screen, because there are a couple of links embedded within them that you're not able to click if you're looking at a picture of the same slides on my screen. So there are 2 links. Wherever we land, we'll go in that order, if that's okay with Kate and with all of you.
Looks like producers everywhere are going to be disappointed by the choices here.
I'm not that interested in talking about money, but people are. Okay, let's see, 5 is 8. Oh, I'm not counting myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Okay, so right now winning with a vote of 5 to 3 is performance conventions, and then intellectual property, and then if time permits, perhaps finances and budgeting. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen if that's all right, and I can make it do the thing it's supposed to do. All right, it says participants can now see my screen. Is it telling the truth? You can see me?
Yes, we can. Whoop, whoop.
Hooray! Thank you. Good. Okay, so my strong preference in assignments like this is to go second. Because I always want somebody else to do this and possibly do it all wrong. And then if I do it like they did it, then if I did it all wrong, well, at least. But I am unavailable to go next week. And so here we go. The theme for this week per Canvas was Shakespeare's Early Modern Playhouse. Today's September 2nd. And we're going to talk about if we get to all three things, the big major themes from these three readings that we had the McDonough piece, that is my attendance, that's not helpful, the Potter piece, and then the Scott McMillan piece. And what did we just say? Performance conventions. So we're going to start with performance conventions. We're going to get there by clicking on here. There are so many words in these readings, and I don't want to try to explain the things you've just read. So I'm gonna bounce pretty quickly through what I perceive to be the way things are. And Kate, you can tell me that I got this right or got this wrong or missed something huge. And then I've got a quote from our reading, and then a couple of questions that are connected to these big ideas. So looking at this 1590 to 1610-ish 20-year span, I think a little bit of buffer on the left and the right of that timeline, we're looking at space and opportunities, or space opportunities and their limitations. And the big thing seems to be that there are people performing in outdoor spaces and indoor spaces, that the Globe and the Rose and the theater and the curtain and all of those fancy things that I highlighted on my thing and then rotated the page and all my highlights got lost.
The Fortune and the Red Bull, you're good.
Thank you. These outdoor spaces are walled, circular-ish, polygonal shapes that people did have to come inside of, but that had roofs only over some of the area and then used sunlight as their main sort of driving light, as opposed to these indoor spaces that seemed to be early salon style performances that were much smaller, much more indoor. I was interested in that we seem to have three sets of pairs of words for the same thing. I think that it was McDonough, I could be wrong, who talked about the indoor versus outdoor, and then private versus public, and hall versus amphitheater. As we're talking about these things, as far as I can tell, those mean the same thing. And that when you hear amphitheater in this era, you could equally have public or equally have outdoor in that space. These opportunities, or these spaces, gave opportunities for not much set. In my real life, I teach high school theater, and we have a travel competition group. We have to fit all of our sets inside of a 10-foot by 10-foot square box that everything has to fit inside of, and then we take it to competition, and it has to fit in a box there, and then we take it to the next competition, and it has to fit in a box there. And this feels a little bit like that these groups have these very specific limitations on, I've got this much space to put my stuff in, let me put all my stuff here. And then if I'm going to take the same show over to the indoor theater across the river, we're just going to take all that stuff, and it doesn't have this huge footprint like I perceive 100 years later, where we have permanent inside fixtures and lots of large moving set pieces, and 250 or 300 years later when we have Broadway size things that have to work on hydraulics. It is the case that whenever I go see any show, including major professional shows, I start pondering whether I could fit that set into a 10 by 10 box. I have determined I could probably do Hadestown. I could probably not do Jersey Boys. Maybe. So the other thing that was fascinating to me, one of my favorite things to talk about performance convention and ways that they did this then, is the gender identity and gender expression in the performers. My quote here is from the McDonough text. This is on page 44. He says, the layers of reality become dizzying in the wooing scenes of acts 3 and 4. This is As You Like It, he's talking about, where Rosalind, as Ganymede, plays Rosalind, allowing herself to be courted by Orlando. Thus, a boy actor plays a female character who plays a boy who pretends to be a girl. This is so exciting to me. Recent scholarship has emphasized the homoerotic implications of these conventions, suggesting that the relationships between adult and apprentice actors may have been sexual, and that the dressing up of pretty boys as pretty girls had a frankly sexual appeal to the males in the audience. So as somebody who really enjoys unconventional casting, we did a production of the Icarus myth last year, and our King Minos was played by just this incredible woman. We had several other women who played the young versions of Daedalus and of Icarus. And just the whole way through the cast have these deliberate unconventional casting choices. I am very pleased to see that at about 1600, we've also got these, what I think of now as unconventional casting, but boys playing girls playing boys playing girls playing boys. That turtles all the way down problem is kind of exciting. So questions that I'm gonna throw on the table to discuss. I'm gonna pop both of these up and then bounce back and forth to them as we can. The first one is aesthetic preferences from this 20-ish year span. What are the conventions that are all up in your aesthetic? I'm all into some unconventional gender casting. And are there conventions that we should just abandon? Nope, didn't like that. Everything should have fully staged hydraulic sets. Bring in the Broadway. So I want to put that on the table. The second, I've lost my mouse. And then the second is in this question, like can we get into this idea of non-traditional casting conventions and talk about what's exciting to us as 21st century theater makers? And then I put this on my slide, but I did not say this out loud. I am pretty interested more in how the things of 1600 connect to the things that we're making today than I am in how the things of 1600 connected to how the things of 1600 worked. So I'm trying to bring these questions with a what do we do now kind of lens, and would love to open up that for a place to chat. A quick note, this painting is by Nathaniel Bacon. It is called Cook Made with Still Life of Vegetables. It's from about this moment and it's ridiculous. So I have put those sort of period relevant photos. They're not theater painters, but this is what artists thought women looked like, and vegetables. So I will mute myself and let other people say some things. Right, but the gourd's tiny.
Y'all are killing me. Because my first thought when you said, oh, this is what an artist then thought women look like, and I'm like, what's changed? Sadly. So just to answer one of your questions in terms of casting and gender, for me, I feel like maybe I'm in a different lane, but a similar lane to you, where I'm really interested in, since we can have fun with Shakespeare and take some liberties, I really am interested in mirror, like when I audition a play, going, who's the best actor for this role, and then reassembling the gender that they want to portray. Like I'm totally into somebody cross-dressing, or yeah, cross-dressing, I guess still an okay term. But like I'm really interested in like, why can't this character be non-binary? Why can't this character you know, like why can't Benedict and Beatrice be two dudes who are on opposite sides of the political stall? Why can't, you know, so for me, like that's the kind of queer gender fuckery that I would like to see happen. Because I was really scared of it. And then I did Midsummer during the pandemic with my students, and I had a lot of NB people audition, and I was like, oh, okay. And I had 2 trans people audition, and I was like, how do I move through this as a cis guy? And so we talked about it in auditions, and I was like, would you feel comfortable, like, if I were to readapt this around whatever pronouns you would like that you were excited to play for this role? And everybody was like, that's cool, let's do that. So like, and it turned out beautiful. Like the sense of the story was not lost at all. It was a lot of work, but like, it was really exciting work. So for me, that's kind of where I think I am on that aesthetic right now.
Yeah, I love that. I think that I have maybe more than half of the trans and non-binary students at our school come through my program because we let them. Which is disheartening in the world in which we live, because the rest of the school has spaces that won't let them. We fight that a lot, but yeah, we're totally for. I am totally for. I say we when I say we, I am predominantly referring to my colleague and I who work closely. We talk a lot about, can we, in good conscience, make this character a woman, not a woman. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. Any further things that like what like what's really exciting, Shakespeare or not, in this world of non-traditional casting? Yeah, Nat.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just going back to what you and Noah were saying. So if you were to do something like Julius Caesar with all women, would it be tricky to do Julius Caesar with like 80% women and 2 men? And how would that sexual dynamic play into making a change like that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Noah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the most successful ideas of this is a colleague of mine did a production at Santa Cruz Shakespeare of Comedy of Errors, where I felt like the gendery fuckery of it all would be really weird. But they basically reverted or inverted all of the sexual roles in the leads. So the Dromios were female, the Antiphili were female, and they turned Adriana into a man, but kept him having a sister. And it was hysterical. And it really, really worked and was set in the 80s. So like, there was just so much tomfoolery, you know, and with Julius Caesar, I think it could very much work depending on, like, I think one of the key concepts of theater sometimes that we forget, that at least for me, the Globe reminds me of, we're standing in broad daylight. We don't have all the tech shenanigans. Like, it's human beings telling a story. So it's our suspension of disbelief. This is just a world where the women rule. Oh, how scary is that? Yeah, like shock. And I think it's kind of amazing. And at least me as a male identifying actor, I would go goofy at the chance to play the soothsayer or Caesar's wife. I'm so sorry, I can't think of her name right off the top of my head.
Portia.
Thank you, Portia. Like,
Oh no, Portia is Brutus's wife. Sorry.
Clyde, no. Anywho, but yes, her. So for me, I'm like, I think that if we can just suspend our disbelief that this is the world that these people are in, like, why the heck not? Especially for those of us who have programs with high amounts of female identifying students. It's like, I saw when I was an undergrad how many times they were like, well, we're doing Caesar, just, we're going to do Caesar, but like, we have no men. And then it was like, they expected all these women just to play men, which I'm like, that's great too. But like, why couldn't we have inverted it? Calpurnia, thank you. I always think of her as Jackie O in my head. So yeah, that's how I might think of it, Annette. Sorry, that was long-winded. Hugs and kisses.
Yeah, no, I love that too. That brought me back to this question about what performance conventions are all up in your aesthetic. My colleague and I are all about some presentational storytelling. Let us be humans in 2022, telling you a story that happened in the past. That if I put on this hat and tell you now I am a man, or for that matter, now I am a duck, you believe me because I put on a hat and told you that was what I was doing. That presentational storytelling style is way up in my wheelhouse. I like that. I get kind of bored with let me build an interior set and make people be humans. Yeah, Kate.
I just wanted to chime in on this a little bit. So because at least probably 50% of my work happens in carceral spaces, all of these original stage practices play like $1 million because we have to get literally every bobby pin through security. We need to be very strategic about what costume pieces and what props we need. And how can we tell the story in it's not even a 10 by 10 box, Lauren. It's like a 2 by 2 box that we have to fit everything in. And I think in that space, I also see that working on Shakespeare has invited the men over and over again to then come to a contemporary text with a different kind of approach to it. And what do we absolutely need to tell the story? And that thing of Shakespeare tells us what time it is when he wants us to pay attention to what time it is. And if it doesn't matter to him, then he doesn't clock it, right? And if somebody is carrying a torch, we know that it's dark. Because in the carceral space, the lights are on all the time because security is not going to let us go to a blackout, people. It's not happening, right? So how do we handle the stage combat? We fight, we build the fights. I have honestly I remember the first show that I directed in there was actually Tracy Letts' Superior Donuts. And there is like a 7-page fight in Act 2 of Superior Donuts. And I remember one of the men said to me while we were building the fight, he said, I never thought I would learn anything about violence from a female. What was tricky is because I'm a woman, I'm not allowed to touch them. And so so I had a teaching assistant who was also a woman. So she and I would like do a move and then have the guys repeat it, but we do touch a shoulder, or we touch an elbow, but we cannot fight with them. Right. So we had to sort of have parallel fights going on. But there's the lights are always on. All our sound cues are generated live, which is sort of super fun, both when it works and also when it goes wrong. Yeah. So all of those original practices are a huge part of my working practice.
I really love live music with Shakespeare. It's so beautiful. It's always and I love a festival party atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you notice, by the way, in that little Julius Caesar clip from the Globe that we looked at, that at the end, the whole cast was singing? Because that's how the plays ended at the Globe and at the Blackfriars, was that the whole company came out on stage after like whatever pile of bodies was left at the end of the play. Everybody got up and they sang a song and they danced together. And I think in one of the quotes I shared too, the guy talked about after the song and the dance are done, this is who spills out of the playhouse, right?
Hadestown ends that way.
Yeah.
It's very, and I definitely got those vibes from that show as well.
Well, and Hadestown does have a little bit of that aesthetic, right? Because it's a unit set and the way they move those tables and chairs around.
It's so good.
takes you to different places and creates sort of different, environments, right?
Yes, I want to note what Catherine just put in the chat about examining how switching or nullifying gender can affect the audience's interpretation of the characters and the relationships. I think that's completely true. I have two anecdotes connected to it. One, I just picked up a script that is a contemporary adaptation of Cyrano that is gender flipped. So all of your strong leading men are now strong leading ladies. And I was surprised. I'm usually 100% on board. Give me a strong woman. I come from a matriarchal family, and we will straight up whack you with the frying pan if you make us mad kind of household. But I was surprised at how slow I was in reading this script to be like, okay, I guess Cyrano can be a lady and I can have this sort of vapid pretty boy. I was disappointed, and I don't know if that's because of the adaptation or if that's because of my ingrained bias, but I didn't take it. That said, I'm in a community where NB erasure and trans erasure is the norm, and to be able to have characters who are on stage and presenting as non-binary or trans is a big deal for that kind of for combating that. My community is trying to literally erase your identity. And so if we can sneak somebody in here and be like, okay, we're gonna let my beautiful actress play this beautiful man, and we're not gonna talk about it. She just is him. And in her personal life, she's a cisgender female who uses she, her pronouns. But on stage, she's the king and nobody questions it. And she's not dressed like a man, she's dressed like her because it's presentational, but nobody questions it because she walks out and proclaims, I'm the king. Like, that is one step for those kids in our community who need to see themselves either way. Yeah, Brad.
I think, to me, that's why Shakespeare endures so well, right? Is because it's not, because the aesthetic, it's so open, there's not a lot of sets, there's not a lot of, necessity for like hard and fast reality. It's all about the human condition. And so if you switch the genders, if you switch the races, if you switch the cultures, all of that, all of the foundation of what he's trying to express still is there, right? Is that it's still, it's a way that for, I have two non-binary kids, so it's like, it's a way for those people to, that are kind of, traditionally, as you say, like erased or underrepresented and stuff, have a way to express themselves through the language, right? And through what he's trying to say about the human condition.
Yeah, Catherine, you had your hand up and then it wasn't.
I don't want to go off too far. I was just going to say that my my final project, I use research in a very loose term, involved me looking into different queering of Shakespeare, and then attempting to do an experiment that went not at all like how I planned, but it involved different gender identity actors performing monologues from Shakespeare, and then having an audience sort of give some feedback on that. And it was interesting because it kind of brought up my thought in casting things in any variety, whether it be race or age or gender, whatever it might be, that in making a choice sometimes, or sometimes, I mean, maybe like specifically not making a choice, being like, I'm just going to cast whoever's the best for the role. It sometimes made a comment that I didn't intend it to. So for example, if you were to do Macbeth and say, I really want there to be a female Macbeth, but then not change Lady Macbeth. Now we have a queer relationship, but does it make a negative commentary on queer relationships that we have such a toxic duo there represented? So it was neither good nor bad. Ultimately, my research fell apart because people who said they would help me out did not, in fact, help me out. So it's very limited. But it was interesting to have a lot of people give feedback where they were like, it changes the meaning of the story slightly when I see that represented. So it was interesting. It gives me pause for thought when casting things.
Yeah, thanks. Noah, what you got?
Yeah, I just to Catherine's point, I completely agree with you. I'm like, not just with gender, but with race, with anything, you have to look at the ramifications of the casting, because sometimes you are so well intentioned, but it doesn't necessarily translate to an intention that is good with the audience. And one of the things I'll say to highlight that is I saw a really beautiful professional production of Midsummer where they made Lysander and Hermia women, and Helena a woman. No, yep, a woman. And so the only male in that trio or in that quadruplet was Demetrius. And the language made it really icky, like it didn't necessarily work, but then currently at the yes, absolutely, Kate, Demetrius sucks anyway. But the overall sense was like queerness is bad, but we'll let it happen. It was kind of like what I was left with. But at the National, they're doing it. I don't know if you've all seen Sex Education, but the kid who, I forget his name, but he's in it. So they made Helena a gay man. And so then Demetrius's relationship of turning down Helena is because he's in the closet. And so like, it actually helped to support that he isn't such an ass, that there was a driving reason behind his choices. So to me, that worked, from my lens better. So again, I think just to mirror what Catherine's saying, like, I think it just depends. Kate has a point.
Yeah.
So I just want to offer, I think that as you're thinking about all of these things, this gets back a little bit to what is your text and making sure that you understand what the text is and what the story is in the first place before you start making these choices. There's a lot of bad Shakespeare in the world because people haven't actually spent the time with the text before they start making whatever adaptation or whatever interpretation or whatever concept they're laying on it, right? So those things can be great when they're really thoughtful, but whew, boy, no more Disco Macbeth, no more AK-47 Hamlet, please. I can't take it. And not actually what the story is.
Yeah, no, I love that you include race and other identities in here. We've got a really strong Black woman performer. We have consciously, we know what we've done, cast her as Babette in Babette's Feast. She and I and my colleague were discussing yesterday, in fact, about the question marks around the fact that Babette comes to Norway to be a servant and the questions that go with a position of servitude. But ultimately, she and we stand on that this is the most powerful character in the play. And she's the one who comes and makes the changes for good, and that we're not ultimately, we think, we hope, we plan, putting her in a position where on stage, our audience is going to receive her as subservient in any way, because she travels as a refugee and takes this position because it's what she feels that she can do. But there's that question of this color conscious casting, this identity conscious casting. What can we do? I would love to see her play any number of these Shakespeare roles. But I feel like, to Kate, to your point, if we don't ask the questions of why are we making that choice specifically, what are we given that we can't do that in good faith? There's no colorblind casting in Central Mississippi. It has to be conscious. We have to be aware and willing to say, this is a Black performer. This is a woman performer. What does that mean on stage? Okay, thank you. Let's shift. I think my second here was intellectual property. Shifting gears slightly. More of my favorite things to talk about. Let's talk about fan fiction and gatekeeping. And I think that I might have hinted previously that I love fan fiction, and I don't care that there is a stigma around the term fan fiction that makes people think that it's not real literature. But in the third article, which was the Macmillan article, there is a beautiful series of comments on letters submitted out by real writers, like open letters shared publicly with these stupid playwrights think they're all that, and they're not even real writers. You can't sit with us. And so this sense that poets are writers and that playwrights and actors aren't. And I'm going to keep talking about identity because it's right. It's so much work to be mad all the time. But Robert Greene writes this whole thing that is like, you don't count. The other major thing, and I know we talked about this quite a lot last week, is the publication rights and the rights to the remix. This is fascinating to me in 2022. Continuing to look at this in how do we legislate these things? How do we get permission, and when do we decide that it is not worth it for us to figure out how to get permission and it's just too easy to steal? So what do those licensing requirements look like? So this has not from that article. I guess my other thing was Robert Greene, but this quote from early in the Potter article is talking about a Sheridan play and a character's line in it. The character, Sir Fretful Plagiary, says he'd never submit a play to that theater because, he whispers, someone there writes himself. And then in the footnote, it says, like, this fear isn't that the manager's going to steal his, or what his fear is that the manager's going to steal the best bits. It never occurs to him that his writing might be bad. And I thought that was funny, because we self-aggrandize and we're like, I don't want this guy to take my stuff, but maybe our stuff kind of sucks. This painting is William Larkin painting around 1615. It says this is an artist who has clearly never seen a baby, but sort of same era of painting. So questions, starting with sort of the fan fiction ilk that I have to put on the table. What's your headcanon? Like headcanon is a fan fiction word, and that is like the things that we build up in our minds that are how I see this. It must be this way. I hated the Magicians television show because I had read the books, and my headcanon and what they put in the TV show were so far not the same thing that I was mad about it and couldn't get over it, and watched like the first 3 episodes and was like, this is trash. So what's in your headcanon? What needs to be a certain way? And how did you get there? Who influences these things for you? And who do we let tell stories? And then on the remix side, and I'm gonna put these down and open the floor again to talk about these issues. When do we cause harm making a remix? Obviously, I can remix Shakespeare, he's dead. And he's way public domain. But what about stuff that y'all make? Like, when can I have your stuff? When can you have my stuff? You can always have my stuff. It's like philosophically part of who I am. I will give you all my things. But when should when should we get to make art that other people started? Where's that line between I am coming up with something sort of loosely tangentially based on something that somebody else said, and I am just rewriting their play. Yeah, Becky, I am all the way aware. I had so many issues with 50 Shades of Grey for so many reasons. None of them were because it was based on Twilight. But I also don't think Stephenie Meyer gave her like to it. I did not read Aragon, but I held pretty strongly, or I from people who I trust, that it was not very good, not worth spending my time on. Catherine, I don't think I've ever seen Minority Ophelia.
So I'm sorry, I wanted to clarify what I meant by that. Any minority group, not necessarily racially minority. It's always hard for me. I somehow feel far more open to casting traditionally male characters in any gender, whereas there are certain female or racial minority characters that I'm like, it's like Ophelia is so gaslit by all the men in her life that to me, while I'm open to it, I'm always like, yeah, but if you cast that as a man, does it take a lot away? And there, I mean, you absolutely could switch it around, but I'm always like, I don't know if I want to do that or not. So that's always tough for me, where in my head, that's like, that's what it is. It's just, you don't mess with that. Although I'm aware of the fact that that's maybe a bit close-minded. So for me, that's kind of where for Shakespeare, that's where I am.
Yeah, I feel like Othello as a white dude is not something I want to see.
Although,
Or for that matter, a white woman.
are you familiar with the photo negative Othello that they did at the Shakespeare Theater in DC? So Patrick Stewart played Othello, and then every other actor in the cast was African American.
It would definitely be something that I'm intrigued artistically, and then in a practical world, I'd be like, man, I'm gonna get absolutely massacred for this. But again, like artistically, I'm like, I love that. If I was producing, it would make me, I would have multiple people I would run that by and be like, is this a good thing? Is this not a good thing?
Yeah, I don't think I'd have the balls for that. But if you
I'm sure Michael Kahn didn't ask anyone's opinion. I think he just did what he wanted to do. And I will say that production, I think it like 87% worked. Like I would give it a strong B+, that production.
Any thoughts? Any other thoughts on either of these? I went the wrong way. Hold on, sorry. Come back to this. Headcanon. Yeah, I wrote in my notes, when does a story stop being fan fiction and start being an original work? Like we think of Shakespeare's, there were several notes in our reading about they're all the way stealing stories. These aren't new stories. Other people were writing the same stories, apparently not as well. So if I write a version of some Greek myth and you do too, you're not copying me.
Well, and I think one of the things that Shakespeare was uniquely good at, I mean, a lot of these guys were doing this in this period, but one of the things he's uniquely good at is not just taking one story, right? But he's taking 2 or 3 different stories and kind of braiding them together in a way that nobody else has done. So he's borrowing from the myth, but he's also borrowing from this guy's novel, and he's also borrowing from this thing that Montaigne wrote. So let me just like braid those things together. And
it's a Seinfeld episode
in a way, but like then sort of to Brad's point, like he's teaching us what it means to be human by the way that he braids it together, which is why 400 years later. Did you see, by the way, on Twitter, some kid this week made a list of writers to cancel, and they wanted to cancel Shakespeare, because there's racism and misogyny in the plays. And I was like, well, so do you think that Shakespeare he can't write about those things with that? And also he's been dead for 375 years. So I think it's a little late to cancel him, but
I don't know, influencer.
yeah.
Hashtag influencing. Gotta cancel Shakespeare. I think that's an interesting point, Kate, that you make about writing about things that exist that are negative. We've gotten some pushback in our community for having male actors play aggressive male roles because we're making their friends hate them. There are bad people in the world. We need to be able to tell stories that include real things that happen. And I'm sorry that bad people happen, but kids should communicate to us, which is always but hard, that playing an unsavory role is something you're having a hard time coming out of. I don't know. I struggle with that too. Like, I feel like we should be able to tell stories about bad things that happen to good people because bad things happen to good people.
Theater gets really boring if there's no bad people in it.
Yeah.
On stage, at least on stage. It doesn't get boring backstage if we get rid of the board.
Yeah. I've had a principal look me in the eye and say, well, can we just do things that don't have conflict? Like, no.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Like,
wow. Wow. How did you respond?
no. We can't. we need to tell good stories that matter.
There is no drama without conflict. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
That's great.
So is there anything else cooking for folks around this question of authorship and sort of the
I don't
slipperiness of it?
understand headcanon. I don't understand the term. It's the first time I've heard the term headcanon, so I'm just trying to listen and I'm trying to follow along and get my head around it.
So let me see if I can give you a
me.
better definition than I am making up out of my own brain. So it's an idea or a like belief about usually a piece of fiction that is part of the way that this character exists in their fictional world. So the cultural example that I'd probably give that is best known would be J.K. Rowling declaring that Dumbledore is gay. And so now everybody who's consumed the Harry Potter series adds to their headcanon, oh, Dumbledore, gay man. For better or for worse, however that parses with what what opinions and biases they've already got set up as facts about Dumbledore. Now we're adding this headcanon that isn't really teased out or addressed in the text itself. It's just something that now the world accepts. I have a headcanon that the two main characters in Fight Club are actually Calvin and Hobbes from the cartoon series. That's not necessarily generally accepted. I don't necessarily think this is a common headcanon, but the parallels make sense in my brain and I like them. So I hold on to that your narrator and your Tyler Durden are in fact Calvin and his good friend Hobbes. It's this stuff that we make up to inform our fictional worlds. And then when somebody challenges it, we're like, no.
So I don't know that I would go, this is a new word for me too, Lauren, but I think as I'm understanding what you're saying, I guess one thing that comes up for me vis-a-vis Shakespeare's plays is there are certain plays that if you put them in, like if you stage them now, right? If your locate or your setting in temporally is right now, then you start to fight the text because there are certain things that just are no longer the same kind of issue that they were. And so I certain plays I feel like I can't stage them any later than maybe 1950, because the world has changed in certain ways, and that's no longer, it's just not going to make sense. It's not going to fly. Like, for instance, Measure for Measure, one of my pet plays. I just feel like if you stage it right now, well, actually, maybe since Me Too, it would resonate differently. But if you stage it in 2015, I just feel like Isabel's going to make a different decision. She's not going to say more than our brother is our chastity. And we're not, it's going to be harder for us to get our brains around that decision that she makes. Whereas if you set that play, you know, pre-World War II, then it's a little easier to not completely lose who she is or why she's making that decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
As a
love
for
that.
instance, yeah.
That for sure seems like, okay, because of this text, this has to live here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emily, what you
Totally.
thinking?
So this is probably tangential, but Kate just kind of stuffing at the end of the Potter piece that kind of got me was that the stage and the page. It's a big quote, but it's about that do however prefer to avert their eyes from the contingent side of its theater, the play that can be longer or shorter depending on the audience, the topical illusion that is cut when it ceases to be topical. Dramatic character slightly different when played by a different actor is all about all of this, and I think that I love that part. It's at the in the stage and the page at the end of the section really spoke to me, because the idea that I work with a lot of traditional theater, be traditional, and what that means, and how we can what parts of the play, it takes a lot of work and a lot of thought, but what parts of the play are essential to the actual play, and what parts of the themes, and then what parts of the play can be adjusted to either push to get the audience in or to push the audience forward in their thought. If that is answer, it doesn't really answer the question, but that's something that when I read all of these articles, of course, the first thing I did, of course, was cast everybody as Muppets, and like Statler and Waldorf were the Condell and Lowen guys who got on stage and like, we're these guys and that play sucks. No, the play's good. And I was like, okay, then this is all about the Muppets, which helps me a lot, basically do anything. But then it also goes into the whole repertory idea and how repertory has become this romantic ideal, which I really liked about, to go back to your other question, which is parts of putting on a play really speaks to me, is the repertory idea, this group of people who just does it all and do it all of the time, and we just have so much information and we just spew it out like a different type of topic on a daily basis, is a really exciting, a romantic ideal that kind of comes and goes in society as we move forward. And this is why I don't talk very much. I'm done.
No, thank you. I love that. I love the idea of all of us getting together and saying all the words all the time. That very much feeds my ADHD / type A / I want to make all the things and give them to all the people brain. So yes, please, thanks. Let's get together and say words. So I could also chat copyright law all day. I have strong feelings about like Disney and the public domain and licensing, and when inconvenience outweighs compliance, and when it should, and poster art, and when we want to put the little produced with special arrangement by Playscripts on our poster, and then we see other posters that look better that don't have it because they're out of compliance. But do you have any further thoughts? I've got one more section that I want to skip to, and then we'll talk about money. Excuse me. Sorry, should have muted before I did that. Can't breathe spit, actually. Do you have any thoughts about this idea of remixing with and or without permission that we want to pop through before shifting to this last set of thoughts and questions? I am here for the Lord Chamberlain's Muppets. Yes.
Such a good idea. I'm a little open to the idea of that repetition by others is flattery, and the only problem with it is, especially in today's world, it creates more harm than good, I feel. But like this idea that somebody sees your works and wants to like tell somebody else, it's kind of like when your kids are watching the same movie and over again, and then they go out to recess and then they're reenacting it. I mean, that's their form of creativity. There's that form of self-expression that they're seeing something and reenacting it. And what part of that, when it, I don't, it's hard to say when that becomes bad, but there is a definitely fine line, especially when we're talking about age and kids and stuff like that. But I think there's some power and good in it as well.
Any other insight here? Thank you, Emily. I love watching little kids remake Toy Story in the backyard. I don't have children. They aren't in my backyard. They're somewhere else. Okay, I'm gonna bounce to everybody's favorite thing, money. Becky, come on. Say what you're saying.
Okay, so sorry, I lost the raise hand button. I think it's sometimes okay and should be broken from the script / royalties contract. Like, for example, I'm trying to get permission to do To Kill a Mockingbird. I got permission from my principal. He said change the N-word to Negro. That was fine. As per the contract, you can't. Sometimes you just have to know your audience. And I work in a Title I school. So I'm like, well, what do you guys think? They're like, we shouldn't do it. I'm like, okay, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I also appreciate asking for permission, getting no response, and carrying on as though you've gotten permission, which I feel like if I've done my due diligence to ask the question, and I've asked the question and I've asked the question and I've asked the question, at some point I have to make art. And there comes a point where I tried to get the permission to do the thing I wanted to do and nobody got back with me. So I'm going to do it. And if they come and tell me to shut down, then I'll be like, sorry, I tried, and we'll shut down. But that's hard when we're dealing with students, of course, and there's risk of that. But I run into that inconvenience outweighs, or the convenience outweighs the compliance if I can't get a response, in my experience. And in a lot of the people who I have worked adjacent to, I try for way longer before I'm like, well, this is now too inconvenient, we're just going to do it. Which is, that's probably a black mark on me. Sorry. We do what I can. Okay, quickly looking at rates of pay. This is from, I don't know where anything lives. This is from the McDonough article too, I think. But they mentioned that per play, these acting companies were paying £1 to £10 per play, but then they start talking about what seems to be livable wages. And they're like, this writer lived on 25 to 35 pounds a year. So from a like putting that, I haven't done the math. I'm not a math person. I'm doubly not a money person, but it seems like these guys are making bank. And that if you're in a company that is putting out 14 or 15 new shows in a row, which they seem to be in this repertory system, and you're making £1 to £10 per new play that you write for your company, you're racking up well over a livable wage all of the time. And they mentioned the inconsistency of this, especially when things close because of plague. And you have to do something different, and we have to put all of our things in our 10x10 and take them to the country and be in places where there's less plague, that maybe we have a year where we are actually starving. That's a problem. But yeah, can't zoom in. Would love to, but that didn't so much work. But in general, or at least across the average, these folks seem to have the money. And then the other thing that I was pretty fascinated by was the records keeping and the concept of company assets. These aren't generally individually owned things, but things like the human resources. Who are the people in the company that are able to do the thing? There's a lot of talk of Richard Burbage. There's a lot of talk of the two clowns whose names exist and escape me, and I could look them up, but I'm
Kemp
just
and Armin.
thank you, that are connected to this company. But then also the scripts and the text. We paid for the scripts and the text. We paid the playwright for the scripts and the text. The playwright's part of our company, lucky us, but also lucky playwright because playwright's part of the company. So playwright continues to own the scripts and the text. And then all of this talk about beautiful costumes. And I loved the comment that the Elizabethans were way more interested in beautiful costumes than in accurate costumes. And that they have the bizarre mix of costumes that indicate characters, to indicate characters by status, not necessarily by period or historical accuracy. And as somebody whose jam is telling stories as a human in 2022 by putting on a hat and announcing myself as a duck or whatever it is, I appreciate that they're like, I'm going to announce myself as a rich person by putting on this very rich cloak, instead of I'm going to try to make myself seem as realistically Roman as I can, whatever those are. And then, of course, the buildings and the real estate, having access to real property is a big deal now. I don't own a theater. I would love to own a theater. If you need to get me a birthday present, my birthday is in July. I will take it. But owning that property is super valuable to the company. So this is from the Macmillan article. The actors paid writers a better wage than did the church, the university, the grammar school, or the noble family. And then a little bit later, if one considers the other kinds of careers an educated man of literary ability might take up, one still finds the dramatists coming out ahead. So for all of Robert Greene's harumphing, they're making the dollars. And I feel like there's some parallel to that in our 2022 world, where we do have scholarly people who are like, all of this TikTok trash is trash. I watch a lot of Twitch. It's not high intellectual content, but dude, those guys make bank. And there are people coming in and dropping $500 on them at a time just because they're playing games that these people like. And that's bizarre, but I'm not mad about it, because what a weird and cool and neat world we live in. Okay, so two questions here. This is, again, thinking about your own world space. What are the resources that you have that makes it easier for you to make stuff? Connected to this, if you keep a list, like Henslow's record of his company costumes, how obsessive compulsive are you about keeping that list? What do your lists look like? If you're interested here, this lounging dapper man is Nicholas Hillard painting. Nicholas Hillard painted Henry Percy, 9th Earl of Northumberland, called the Wizard Earl. They think that this painting is 1590 to 1595-ish. Becky, I cannot make a list. Somebody's going to have to do it for me. You are welcome to come here and make that list for me. I task students with making lists all the time, but if you're not a list maker, I can format your spreadsheet. No lists in my world. So what are your records like? The second question in this part of the world is, what kind of access do you have to your facilities? I live in a black box. We have sole ownership of our black box now, as the theater department at our school, but for the first 4 years that I was at this school, we shared a performing arts building that was a multi-purpose building with more than 25 other organizations, any of whom could boot us out at any moment. So if we were having a rehearsal and cheer decided that they needed to be there, they could come in and be like, hey, we're on the calendar, y'all got to go somewhere else. And that was long before I got here. The status quo And so what about these spaces? What are the facilities barriers that inhibit your ability to make cool art? So those are the two questions that I have around this. I know that we are advancing upon the bell.
Yeah, and I need a couple minutes at the end, so
Okay.
you got about 3 minutes to.
Thank you. I have 3 minutes on those two questions. So I'll look for like 3 comments. If you have a comment on either of those, I would love to hear it.
Okay, I finished chewing. I can talk now. I can address the one that's on the screen right now. Nope, the other one. There you go. Sorry. Actually, I can address both, but I'll start with that one. I don't even have nice things to say about whom I share my space with. I told our band director some not nice words, and I quoted South Park in doing so. She didn't like it, but she thinks that she runs the auditorium, and I'm not down for that because apparently she put me on the calendar. Like I didn't get a say on when our shows were. She just put it on the calendar. I'm like, thanks, glad I get a choice here. And then the other one, so I mostly share my space with chorus, orchestra, band, guitar. And then that one, I am lucky that we officially do have a person for theater at our district. She has a doctorate, not in theater, but she does have a doctorate, and she's really great because she put herself through grad school by doing tech theater. So I'm like, hey, please help me. How do I attach this door to a thing? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Last year was the first year of my 5 years teaching theater that I actually built a set because I didn't have the resources or the skill or, I mean, yay, buying power tools out of my pocket because the school wouldn't buy them. So.
Yeah, any other comments to your experience with space and with money and with records keeping? Yeah, Nat.
Becky, do that GoFundMe on Facebook to raise money for power tools at your theater, and I will help you. Do the Facebook thing. Not allowed? Okay.
Collier
Well,
is really rude about all of the above, and they wouldn't even reimburse me because not e-verified, didn't get approved first.
Come and see play that goes wrong and spend some time rooting around some of the extra things that I have, including lots of extra ellipsoidals.
Thank you.
Got extra lights and stuff. Just come and hit me up. Guys, Becky is in Naples and I'm in Fort Myers. She's like 35 miles away. Yeah, as to performance spaces, I am the artistic director and founder of a theater. Thankfully, the building is paid for, the land is paid for, in so much as land can be owned by anyone. So I don't have issues there. It's just, it's not a black box. So we are limited by the size of our stage and the proscenium and so on. So sometimes I would love to get rid of the risers or work in a space that didn't have risers so I could do things in 3/4 or in a thrust or in a galley style, as I did before I had this particular space and the riser. So that just the space of things can be limiting. Also, I have audiences looking down on the stage, which I think is an interesting dynamic, as opposed to audiences looking up at the stage. And I'd like to play around with that and would prefer or like the opportunity to do more work that involves interaction between the audience and the actor, and the proscenium space that I have is a little bit limiting artistically. But I don't have like the same space ownership, the space ownership issues that Becky was describing. And what was the other question? Can you flip back to that other one?
Go back then. Yeah, what are your own resources?
Amazing people, amazing people that put it all together, that are like-minded. We've got the building, got a whole bunch of stuff, but like the number one thing, the main resource is humans. Humans that are multi-talented, that like to work together and like to create things that are greater than ourselves. I could do it on a lawn, I can do it on a stage, I can do it in a pool, I don't care. But it's the people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great phrase to go out on. It's the people. Absolutely.
Nice. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing and give it back to you. I did put a couple of task prompts in this PowerPoint if you want to take creative, do creative work related to these things. There are tasks that you can do, and that's me.
Nice. Thank you so much, Lauren. Well done.
Thank you.
So I just want to check in as we wrap up. So next week we shift from the Playhouse to the Printing House. And I want to just give you a heads up. The first reading is really long and the other two are very short. Okay. And the first one is by this guy, Philip Gaskell, and he gets way in the weeds, right? So my invitation to you is to like write down your questions or the places where you get a little lost. Just make some notes as you go. Just know that he's going to take you into the weeds, right? Because I think even just having that as you start to read with him, like he's good for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's a little bit like reading James Joyce. You're like, wait, what's happening here? I thought I understood. And the other two I think are much more accessible. So get as far as you can get with Gaskell. And if there's a point at which he breaks your spirit, like abandon ship and go to the other two, but do try to hang in there for him with him as long as you can, because there's a lot of good info in there. Yeah. That makes sense. Cool. And then the other thing that I can promise you as we move into the Printing House is that we get all these cool answers to like trivia questions. So you can now win every bar bet after you spend some time in the Printing House. And that's all I got. I'll hang around if anybody has any questions.